Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Daiyan Wolkenstein here with you from the LAFB Network. If you're joining us on ESPN Radio, thank you so much for tuning in. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Daiyan Wolkenstein, the NFL Combine is now officially underway, and as a matter of fact, in the midst of us doing this show, they are currently running the drills now for day 2 as we speak, but we wanted to do a short recap of day 1, some of the standouts from the drills yesterday, as well as some of the reporting as far as what's being heard around the Chargers organization. You know how this normally goes. As you say, it's lying season during the draft, during this time of the draft. So as far as all indicators go, everything that Dan and I are saying right now could end up being completely false, but these are some of the early reports that have been coming out from Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers organization during here at Indy. But before we get into everything, Dan, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Happy Friday to you and to everyone listening at ESPN and YouTube and Spotify and everywhere you get your podcasts. Thank goodness it's Friday because, man, do we need it. But good thing for us is we have a lot of coverage that's going to make us happy looking at the NFL Combine, Chargers content, so we got you covered. How are you? Happy Friday.
Is it? Is it?
It is for some. It is for some.
Normally, I'd say you can't have anything to complain about when it's Friday, but we're moving on.
Here we are. Here we are. Let's get into it. Combine started yesterday. Today, we're in the midst of DBs, tight ends, both big needs for the Chargers team. Let's start with yesterday before we get to all the kind of key takeaways from Indy.
I mean,
a lot of big people moving.
There were some big men moving yesterday. I don't think anybody helped their draft stock more, even though when you turn on the tape, I didn't even feel like he needed the combine. But Braden Fisk.
Yeah, there were 3 guys. There were 3 names I thought were like, yeah, those were the winners by far.
I mean, are you kidding me with what Braden Fisk came in there and did yesterday? Talk about just complete domination in almost every single drill. Did he go out there and lead? I mean, not only running the 40 in the time that he ended up running it in, but what he was able to do as far as the broad, the vert. Just when you watch him on tape, Dan, he's just a monster.
Florida State defensive tackle, by the way, for those who don't know.
Just an absolute monster when he comes through the line, just has that tenacity to just find the football and demolish whoever is in front of him to go out there and get it. And then to show the athleticism that he did yesterday, not only in the 40, but what he was doing laterally through the hoop drill. Obviously, the broad and the vert were both very impressive for someone of his measurables and size. Dan, he ran a faster short shuttle than Aaron Donald. At a 4.37, Aaron Donald was a 4.39. I mean, this dude's athleticism is off of the charts for what he was able to display yesterday. So I didn't think that he needed it, but in terms of Chargers fans, if we think that they're going to prioritize that defensive line maybe someday on day 2, unfortunately, Braden Fisk may have just shot himself into the first round conversation, and he probably will not be there at 37 when the Chargers select.
Yeah. Talking about big men moving. Another defensive lineman who I think really helped the stock today. Not necessarily as much as some of the others we'll get to, but Trevondre Sweat, Jake. This man pushing 366.
Weight did not change from the Senior Bowl to the NFL Combine. He just said, "Nope, I'm not losing weight. What for?"
Which is, well, honestly, he's one of my favorites for the Chargers. I would love to see his presence on this defensive line. But dude ran a 5.27, weighing 366 pounds. Imagine
pretty damn good for that.
For visual reference, imagine someone 366 pounds running full speed at you, and you're standing still. I would get dusted. It would be like in Endgame where you just snap the finger and I'm gone. That's what this guy looks like, a mountain. And then we go to the edge position. I think another guy who blew up. That's funny. Easy transition from Chop, Florida State. Chop Robinson from Penn State.
Have a day.
Woo! I'm very high on Chop Robinson. Some people have a little lower, but that dude flew, and he's kind of an athletic freak. I think Bruce Feldman, I had heard him on an episode somewhere, saying he's like the mini Micah, where he's so freakishly talented. And if you can retool him, if you can, because he like still has to learn how to pass rush. Like he's so raw, but the guy just has so many freakish athletic traits. The guy could be nasty. And then when you go to the linebacker position, there are some just absolute freaks. And a guy I really like, Edgerrin Cooper from A&M. And then Peyton Wilson, man, that dude was hauling, Jake. You called it to me. You said beforehand, this guy is going to cook. And boy, did he ever left everyone else in the dust.
You mentioned Bruce Feldman's. I mean, Peyton Wilson was his number 4 on Feldman's freak players. And just to see someone his size at 6'3", 233 pounds, and he comes out there and he runs a 4.43 officially. I mean, he was already expected to test well. And when you go out there and you watch guys like Dallas Turner, who, you know, everybody expects to go early in the draft and runs a 4.47, and everybody's like, whoa, all right. And then, you know, no big deal. Even though, yes, there is a sizable weight difference between Dallas Turner and Peyton Wilson, but still, 6'3", 233 pounds to run a 4.43 in the 40. I thought he had a great day, you know, had a great season as it relates to NC State. So I'll be interested to see where his draft stock goes in a not the strongest linebacker class, but as Dan mentioned, Edgerrin Cooper, he should solidify himself as linebacker 1. I would expect him to be off the board at day 2. But Dan, there was a lot of surprises. Yes, I mean, just in terms of just the testing numbers, again, big men running is always going to perk your ears up. Darius Robinson. It's funny because we've been talking about Darius Robinson. Unfortunately, this is not a stock up situation. This is more of a stock down. But I mean, everybody was talking about Darius Robinson from Missouri and what was happening at the Senior Bowl and where people were projecting his draft stock. And unfortunately, just didn't have the best combine day. 285 pounds, he ran a 4.95, which people expected that to be a lot faster. You know, had some other good drills throughout the day, and he's already proven on tape where he can win, good short area quickness. You know, that praise has already been sung, and that tape speaks for itself. But I think just from the testing standpoint for what he's put on tape, that everybody expected him to test a little bit better yesterday.
Yeah, and I will say for the linebackers in general, remember what this linebacking core looks like in Baltimore and the archetype that they look for. Think Roquan Smith. For reference, Roquan Smith had a RAS score of 8.58, 40-yard dash 4.51, 10-yard split 1.58, 2.63 20-yard split. Some of the guys that we collectively like, Edgerrin Cooper, same thing, 4.51 unofficial, 9.34 on the RAS score. Curtis Jacobs, another guy I like, 4.58 40, 9.1 RAS score. Cedric Gray, another guy I like, 4.64 40. These guys are all kind of in there. And then Peyton Wilson, he blew the RAS score again. These are all unofficial because these aren't official times yet. But the guy had a 4.43.
That was official, I believe.
That's insane to me. The one part that I was kind of surprised with Peyton Wilson was he has smaller arms. His arms look a good 2 inches shorter than the other guys.
Which is interesting considering just how, I mean, like he looks like he's lanky. So
but
you figured that he was going to have that length.
Yeah, so that was surprising to me. But I think the linebacker is a position that Chargers fans should be prepared to see get drafted earlier than they may have expected, because I think it plays a much bigger role in this defense. Yeah, so today, this is probably one of the days that means the most to Chargers fans, because we get to see two positions that the Chargers drastically need.
Not that we don't drastically need everything, but today's point,
true.
Yes.
Tight ends and corners leave a lot to be desired with this Chargers team. And good news for Chargers fans and NFL fans is there is a boatload of corners and safeties going today. as well as tight ends, very heavy at the top, but maybe some sleepers at the bottom. Corners and safeties, very deep cornerback class. A lot of safety names that I don't think people are really talking about as much. What's your take on what we're seeing today so far from this group?
I think it's proving that there is a lot more talent in this class rather than it just being top heavy in terms of where you're going to be able to find these guys, whether it's the second round or beyond. There's some unfortunate news relates to Curly McKinstry because he's not testing today due to a Jones fracture in his foot that the Dodgers were able to find. Good news for him is that he's still going to test at the pro day, and then he'll end up having surgery after that, which means he'll be fully ready to go by the time camp rolls around. But Dan, I mean, Nate Wiggins weighing in the 170 mark. That's eerily similar to, I mean, not the exact same, but it reminds me of when Emmanuel Forbes weighed in last year at like 166 at the combine. Not ideal for a guy that plays as physical as Nate Wiggins. So I would hope between now and when the pro day happens that you're going to see some weight put on for that. But just in general, I think this class is extremely deep. There's a lot of sleeper names that I think that people need to get a little bit more familiar with. Yeah. Whether we're talking about Renardo Green from Florida State, Kamal Hayden out of Tennessee, Cam Hart, who probably isn't being no longer considered necessarily a sleeper name, but Cam Hart and Kyrie Jackson, two of the more bigger bodied defensive backs in this class that I'm very high on.
I like the two Jones kids too. Elijah Jones,
Jerry Jones. Even though some people may consider him just a straight slot corner, just from the fact that he's from Michigan anyways, you have to be interested in what Mike Sanderstill is going to do in this secondary. So there's a lot of names, both corner and safety alike.
And those are all corners. Like there's a bunch of safeties too. Like there's safeties that I think, I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jake, but it feels like the safety group is not really being talked about at all compared to the cornerback class. But there are some dudes, man.
There are some dudes. I think a majority of people are just kind of expecting that if there's one in-house free agent to be re-signed, that it's going to be Alohi Gilman. And until free agency actually takes place and until we hear an announcement on that, whatever way that's going to go, I think all the talk about safety is going to be put on the back burner until then. But do your due diligence and pay attention to what these safeties are doing today, because you just might need one of them come April.
You probably are going to get one regardless.
I would think so. JT Woods hasn't shown anything that gives you any semblance of hope. You need some depth in that position, and whether that's going to be filled by an outside free agent or one of these safeties, absolutely.
Again, right now, if it's not Alohi Gilman, it's JT Woods and AJ Finley and Derwin. Like, yikes. So some guys today, Jake, that I really, really like. And again, remember, versatility is key for this Chargers defense. You're looking for players at all positions that can play many positions, do lots of things well, so they can utilize them as best they can. The kid from Texas Tech, Jadrian Taylor Demerson, get to know that name a lot. And probably the one that I like the most is Cam Kitchens from Miami. He is a fun player to watch. He kind of has the Derwin James archetype in terms of his play style. James Williams, the kid is 6'4" as a safety. Like, he's dunking on people. So he's fun. A couple of smaller guys that I think would be fun to have. I like Malik Mustafa from Florida State. He's a safety that, a little bit more compact frame, but plays super hyper aggressive. This group, honestly, pick your poison. I think it depends on what you're looking for as a corner or safety, but tall, compact, outside, inside, box, free, versatile, you name it, they're there. It's just a matter of where you want to draft them and if they're going to be available when you're up.
Yeah, a lot of names to watch.
So we'll probably start seeing names. A lot of fans are probably hoping and wishing that there were more tight ends available that were good. Today might be a day that we get to kind of see some of them play out. Jake, who are some of the ones that you like as maybe sleeper picks for the tight end position?
I mean, for the tight end position, in terms of sleepers, because obviously we're not talking about the Brock Bowers. We've talked about Brock Bowers extensively as it relates to this show, so that's no surprise. But I'm interested to see, number one, Because I know that he mentioned yesterday that depending on how he felt today, that he was going to decide to test. So it's still up in the air. I actually don't believe that he's going to test, but who knows? There might be some surprise in that. But if that's the case, then it's Ja'Tavion Sanders out of Texas. That's the next man up that obviously has an opportunity to steal the show. You move down a little bit lower. You have Cade Stover out of Ohio State. You have Theo Johnson out of Penn State.
Devin Jackson liked him. He was his sleeper pick.
AJ Barner out of Michigan. There's a few in here. I know it's not the tight end class that it was of 2022. And depending on when the Chargers are planning on prioritizing that, because they have to reinforce the tight end position in some respect, you got to pay attention to this class.
Yep. Again, we know this is not the 2023 tight end draft class.
I mean, 2022 draft class, or no, 2023. Yes, sorry.
So a lot of people are still kicking themselves, wondering why they did not draft a tight end last year. But water under the bridge at this point. They can get one. We'll see. So moving on, Jake. Lots of people talking. Lots of people who know things are over at Indy, and we hear a lot of interviews and discussions from a lot of those people. Real quick, take a few minutes to talk about some of the, I guess, key themes that we're hearing from Indy, from folks there with boots in the ground.
This is from Daniel Popper's article that we got a chance to look over. I think the most notable was for anybody who still has issues with Greg Roman in terms of what his role is going to be in this offense, what this offense is going to look like, just predominantly for the fact that he wants to fix the run game. Well, so does Jim Harbaugh. But as Daniel Popper alluded to, while they're going to be invested in reinforcing the run game and bringing that back to a semblance of relevancy, they are still going to be relying on the best part of their offense, which is Justin Herbert's right arm. So while Greg Roman may be the OC, the offense is still being called through Jim Harbaugh in this circumstance. And I think that they finally understand, or not finally understand, but I think that they understood from the get-go of what's going to make this offense run, and it's still going to be number 10.
Yep. Jeremy Fowler was on Chargers Weekly this week and was talking about the buzz around the edge rushers with a possible trade market. He mentioned that Khalil Mack is the one that has been getting a lot more buzz in terms of possible trade options. Daniel Popper then talked about, one step further, that possibility for a trade could be with Detroit. We'll see what the actual compensation could be. Did it say what his compensation would be for that?
There was hypotheticals because Detroit doesn't have a 4th-round pick next year, that there's a possibility that the Chargers may be able to sift a 3rd-rounder. Remember when we went through a mock draft scenario that I can't remember who it was that put it out, but when we were talking about the edge and defensive lineman group, there was a trade for Khalil Mack for a 2025 4th-round pick with Detroit. That was a mock scenario that was put up. And a little bit further into this, again, Daniel Popper believes that strictly due to age, not necessarily production, that he still believes that Joey Bosa has higher trade value because he's still under 30 years old. You could probably get a longer-term contract for him done and a possibility for more production over the next 3 to 4 years. But Dan, as you were probably about to say, we haven't heard a whisper about Joey Bosa as it relates to his possible trading scenarios yet.
Yeah, and Daniel Popper alluded to his prediction that most likely scenario would be that they trade one, keep one. And it's sounding like so far, Khalil Mack is the one that could garner the most value in a trade. So don't be surprised if you see a restructure or something with Joey Bosa, or he stays the current rate. We'll see. Lance Zierlein was also on Chargers Weekly and was talking about some draft prospects. He went through the center position, was talking about JPJ being his offensive center, well, only center number 2. Behind Graham Barton. And he was significant. I wouldn't say significantly, but he was lower on Zach Frazier than probably most. But he did say that you could probably find starting centers in rounds 3 and 4, no problem this year. So something to remember there. He also talked about the tackles, Jake. One name that came out when was asked which tackle he thinks best fits this Los Angeles Chargers team. Right tackle, J.C. Latham. Whether or not he's a good fit at 5, probably better trade back scenario.
That's a whole different conversation.
But that's the one to look at. People mover. Guy plays in the SEC. Book it.
J.C. Latham, great right tackle. Mel Kiper had J.C. Latham go to the Chargers at 5 overall. Respectfully, I disagree.
Yeah. Any other kind of big topic takeaways that we're hearing from Indy as it relates to the Chargers, other than wide receivers? Everyone's fallen in love with these guys. We'll see it this weekend. There's a bunch of them. Roman Wilson, by the way. Ben Herbert predicted to Lance Zierlein he's going on a 4-3. 4-3-3 is what he's predicting. And he goes, if Ben Herbert says it, book it. 4-3-3 for Roman Wilson. Yeah.
Xavier Worthy called his shot, said that he's going to break the combine record today under that 4-2 mark. Well, not under the 4-2 mark, but under the 4-2-2 that John Ross once upon a time ran.
For Jake Hefner, you can find him at Jake T. Hefner on X, myself at DNW Sports. For those on ESPN Radio, thank you guys and gals so much for tuning in. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the combine. We'll talk to you next time on Chargers